Well, I think anything, when you have opportunities, those stem from, having success at wherever you've been. And so that's always your number one motivation, probably in any business, but certainly in ours, is to make sure that you're accomplishing whatever goals you have set for your current team, at that time. And so had some successes out there in Washington State, and opportunities presented themselves as a result. And then as you go through that, you look at pluses, minuses, and certainly there's a lot of pluses at a place like Ohio State. And I'll say this: is anytime you devote your life to a profession, and one of the elites programs, organizations with an elite coaching staff and elite leadership, you have a chance to take one of those phone calls. You have to be, really have your antennas up, and if that's not an opportunity you're going to look into, you better have some good reasons. And I couldn't find enough good reasons to maybe look at some of those other opportunities that you mentioned. And it stems from, again, the elite of the elite in this building, on this campus, and in that coaching staff, or on this coaching staff, pardon me. So it was an opportunity that I was thrilled to talk with Coach, and talk with Coach Shiano, and the rest of the coaching staff. So thrilled to be here.
And I know you guys use a lot of nickel at Washington State, of course. What's your base defense? Is it more of a 4-3, 3-4, and how much do you like to mix things up?
Yeah, I think it's important always to call it variety, but have the ability to mix it up. And I think certain programs lend itself to mixing it up maybe more than others, based on personnel. I mean, I think that's kind of where you start. We structured our 3-4 in my time at Washington State. It was probably more 60-40 in terms of actually being in a four-man front. Probably more similarities than differences as you go through the scheme itself between things in my past and the things we do here.
Third row right, Nick.
Nick Petrovich for the Toledo Blade. You were certainly not the first Mount Union teammate to be in the coaching world. What's made you guys so good at college coaching, and how often do you keep in touch with Jason and Matt?
Sure, and I'm probably, I tell everybody this, I'm the least successful Mount Union coach there is. I'm just hanging on, but no, you mentioned Jason Campbell at Toledo has done a phenomenal job. Matt Campbell at Iowa State, we're teammates, and there's others, but those are the guys in head roles at this point have done a phenomenal job in those roles. I think about Larry Karras being the head coach there for a long time, and you talk about a great brand of football at the level in which we played. I think the thing that you found there is if you prepared, you competed, then you had a chance to be successful. And I think there might be a little bit of a naive way of thinking, as you think, well, if you do those two things, you're going to win football games. And so you get into the profession, and then you kind of find out that that's not necessarily the norm, what takes place up at Mount. But no, I mentioned that coaching staff, just tremendous. You get your undergrad in coaching at a place like that, and so that was a tremendous opportunity for all of us to learn from that coaching staff.
Front row right, Bill.
Bill Corbett from the Columbus Staff Shop. First of all, what does it mean to you to come back to Ohio being a Grove City guy? And secondly, you're joining a staff with Shiano, a very accomplished staff. How do you mesh what you do, your personality, your ideas with what is already here?
Sure. And I'll answer the second question first. I'll say, my role here is to help in any way I can in terms of adding value to the defensive side of the ball, and adding value from a recruiting standpoint. And I think that's the charge of any assistant coach at every program. Whatever titles or roles that you're given, your job is to exceed the expectations of the head coach, and obviously the expectations here are very, very high. And so, from that standpoint, feel very comfortable in working with this coaching staff, and what a great group of mentors to young men, and what a great you talk about elite coaches, and I just keep coming back to that. So thrilled that way, and then certainly from a local standpoint, Ohio is home. My wife's from Alliance, Ohio. We for the last we haven't lived in the state since graduating college, so it's been like 16, 17 years since we've lived in the state. So we vacation in Ohio. I mean, that's kind of as you go around the country and all the stops along the way in coaching. But most certainly this is home. And is that the driving force in this opportunity? No. It's the program, it's the university, but obviously that to suggest that's not an added bonus, I'd be lying to you.
Were you a big Ohio State fan growing up?
You know, we were as a family. You know, my grandparents had season tickets. You know, I was born at Ohio State University Hospital, and my brother as well. And so this is what we knew growing up in terms of college football. Then you find out it's not all like this. You know, so that was an eye opener as you kind of grow up. You kind of expect everything to be the horseshoe, and you find out it's not. But no, it's what we knew growing up.
Right in the front, Tim.
Tim Beal, Cleveland Icon. Alex, I've watched this, and obviously people know about what the speed D is, how aggressive you guys are, how fast you are. You guys have bigger, faster athletes here at Ohio State than how you did at Washington State. But what similar philosophies are you hoping to bring in from what you did over at Pullman to Michigan, kind of with what Gracie and everybody else has here?
Well, I think you mentioned that it's a style of play. You know, it's not a call. It's a brand of football that you know back at my last place that we tried to attach to ourselves, and it was playing an aggressive style. You know, use the term downhill. You know, trying to get as many guys in the backfield, whether it's a blitz or not, as you possibly can. You know, and so when you turn on the film here, that style of play is evident. So there's like I mentioned earlier, there's probably more commonalities than differences. You know, whether the huddle call comes in obviously differently in all those things. You mentioned personnel is different, but there's a brand. The best defenses in the country, regardless if you're 3-4, 4-3, you know, high pressure package, or you know, and then whatever coverages you want to attach in the back end. The consistent thing that you see on film is style of play. And it's guys playing fast, it's guys playing aggressive, it's getting after the football, making sure that you're disruptive in the backfield. You know, some places may have to bring more bodies to get some of those things done. But like I said, probably more commonalities than differences in terms of that style, or at least the style in which we attempted to play.
You got a young safety room you're working with, Jordan Fuller, really the most experienced guy. As a coach coming into a new environment, what's it like, going to a room where, you got a lot of guys with little experience and kind of getting a chance to mold a new group of guys?
Well, it'll be interesting, and you'll find out a lot more. Mentioned the guys this morning, however important, and it is, the off season is, but from a meeting room standpoint, from a walkthrough standpoint, and obviously we're involved in all those things, cracking up, quite a bit now as we lead into next week. We haven't performed on the field yet, and that goes for all positions, whether you're talking about safeties or anyone else. And so we've rehearsed the calls. We haven't performed the calls. Life changes when there's football out there, and so we're going to find out next week. But that's an impressive group of guys. I think we have good speed, good movement skills as you look at it. I think the film suggests that Jordan Fuller can be a lead defensive back in this conference and on a national level, and we're going to make sure that the other guys respond to the challenges that are put forth in front of them in terms of who's going to be the two starting safeties and the two safeties behind them, and then who's going to compete for playing time come fall.
You obviously got football bloodlines. Your uncle is Gary Tinkle. You got to work with him a little bit in Missouri. What was the biggest thing you learned from him when you were on his staff?
On his staff, and I think if you interviewed any one of those guys, it was attention to detail and discipline, and that's something that when you are kind of brought up that way in the coaching ranks, it really serves you, regardless of whatever staff that you're on. I mean, so it gives you something to hang your hat on. Making sure that as you approach from a game planning standpoint, but also just from a recruiting standpoint, there's a plan. It's attention to detail. It's discipline. Making sure you're. And if I didn't say those things, you'd be mad at me too, because that was ingrained in us going back to my years as a graduate assistant several years ago, and then back in the SEC a few years ago. We had some successes there, but no, it's attention to detail and discipline in absolutely everything that you do, and make sure you have a plan for everything. Those are the key things.
Third row left, Dan.
Alex, Dan Hope from 11 Warriors. Alex, when you have the opportunity to come in and work not only for Urban Meyer, but with Greg Schiano as defensive coordinator, as you kind of look ahead to your potential future as a coach, how much of an advantage is it for you to have the opportunity to come in and work with two guys who have been head coaches at this level?
Well, it doesn't happen, and that's just the reality of it. Those opportunities don't present themselves in this profession, and so that's something that is absolutely thrilling. Obviously once you get in the walls and once you get in the building and once you get in the meeting room and ultimately practice come next week, the focus is making sure that you're doing right by this program, doing a great job from the developmental standpoint with those guys, coaching the room and all those things, and so looking forward as to what those relationships or the learning experiences that you can gain from being around those individuals, and there's more guys on the staff that you can learn from as well. But I mentioned it earlier, to be around an elite group of coaches and an elite leadership, that doesn't happen in our business very often. I've been in it long enough to appreciate that. And so absolutely, again, selfishly, awfully excited to be able to work for and work with this staff.
Greg had some opportunities that he ultimately decided to turn down, but when you came in here, did you know that he would be back, or were you uncertain if you might have to take over as defensive coordinator?
No, I took this role knowing what the role was going to be, so that there's no looking forward, and nor is there now.
Second row right, Tony?
Tony Girdham at the Ozone. Speaking with the new Ohio State basketball assistants last summer, they talked about in recruiting, just having the block go on your chest, how many more doors that gets you in. I'm wondering how your first couple of months of recruiting has been, and are you seeing that? What's it like getting into more doors, I guess?
Well, I think that the initial conversation is certainly different, that initial phone call and getting guys to call you is a little bit easier than maybe some of my past stops. But in the end, it's about making sure that you're getting the right student athlete to bring to the program. So and it's there's more to it than just that initial reaction. But no, there's a brand attached to Ohio State, and that's putting it mildly. It's a rare opportunity to have that brand on your Nike pullover or your polo. And so better take advantage of it. But you also know there's an awesome responsibility that comes with that too.
Front row right, Austin?
Austin Moore, Atlanta 10. Alex, you and Coach Schiano both have backgrounds with safeties. I think we all assume that you work at the secondary. I don't know how much, this might be a Coach Meyer question, but how is this new structure going to work? Is Coach Schiano still involved in the secondary? What is his responsibility, your responsibility when it comes to putting together that back end now?
Right now, I'll be coaching the safeties, and Coach Johnson will have a chance to visit with here shortly. Be coaching the corners, but beyond that, in terms of the specifics, Coach Meyer can answer that better.
What do you, when we asked Coach Schiano on signing day about just the two of you getting to know each other, still early in that process, if you had conversations, or if you've had over the last couple of weeks, where are you similar to his philosophy in the back end? Where are you different?
Very, very similar. You're talking about, and maybe some people forget how successful Coach Schiano in a leadership role, as a head coach, and also we're talking about I think the 9th ranked defense of the country a year ago, so to pick his brain and then here's his coaching points, how specific he is in his teaching. Again, I think broad picture, very, very similar. But anytime you go into a new situation, minus when you're maybe on a new staff or you're in a situation where you're just flat out going to change everything, it's my responsibility to learn the language, not the kids' responsibility. So that's kind of been my charge over the last few weeks to make sure that I'm singing the right song, as opposed to revert back to terminology and stuff like that. But big picture, philosophically, very, very similar. Very, very anxious to get on the field next week and kind of see it live and in color.
Front row right, Tim?
Tim May comes to Dispatch. Alex, what is it like now that you're inside the building to work under Coach Meyer? What is he like as a head coach? How would you describe him?
Well, I mentioned earlier in terms of attention to detail and discipline and all those things, and I certainly would use some of those same terms when you talk about this program and Coach Meyer and what he's built. I think the uniqueness, I would suggest that I have felt is a sense of urgency, a sense of intensity that I probably have only felt kind of being a part of new staffs in the past. So to suggest that you walk into the building and the program's built and you kind of feel like, okay, it's just on, okay, the calendar flips every month and this is what we do this month, a sense that it's just another year, just another month, and we'll get ourselves to spring. It feels like it's a new staff and one that trying to build a program, and then I think that just stems from the high bar that he has set, Coach Meyer himself, and obviously the high bar at a place like Ohio State.
In other words, there's an urgency every day to improve. Do you?
1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000%. And you can feel it.
One other thing, you talked a while ago, and it's funny because I was going to ask this question about the learning the new language or learning a different way to say something, but what is it that you think you brought to Washington State that you saw the guys' eyes light up about? Obviously, aggression is one thing, but what is it that you kind of specifically brought there that got their attention?
I think in a program like that, you're talking about, number one being effort. Effort's the greatest equalizer in sport. No one has a monopoly on that. And then bigger, faster, stronger, and all those things. And there's on a week-to-week basis, you may be plus, you may be minus, you may be even. But if you get a group of guys with fanatical effort, and then you as a coach, it's your responsibility to put them in a situation where they're sound. But kind of philosophically, you're saying, okay, we want to be sound. Okay, our package needs to be adaptable on a week-to-week basis, making sure that we're not installing new defense for every single type of offense that you face, and that it's repeatable. So the things that you're doing in spring football, the same things you're doing in fall camp, are the same things that you're doing over the course of the season, so your guys can play fast and from an effort standpoint can kind of reap some of the benefits of playing an aggressive manner of defense.
Hey, one other quick thing. Since you left Grove City, Larry Carey's, Coach Pinkel, the air raid. Are you kind of seeing the sights of college football from the standpoint of how to do things differently? Obviously you're back here now and seeing what Urban Meyer likes to do. But what's the main thing you glean from all of those together?
Well, I think number one, there's a lot of different ways to do things. I would say that the consistent thing over time, from a success standpoint, is the leader in charge and has a foundation, has a philosophy, and everything that works within that organization kind of either builds towards that, or that is at the kind of forefront of every decision that's made on a day-to-day basis. And when it works, that is absolutely the case. And I've been very, very fortunate to be around strong leadership over the course of my career, and certainly continue that here.
We have time for a couple more questions. Second row left, Ari.
Alex, Ari Wasserman, The Athletic. I was wondering, obviously when you take a job as an assistant, your relationship and working for a guy like Urban and working with Greg are big pulls for you. I was wondering, obviously you just got done working for a pretty eccentric guy. He's a very different guy. A lot of people in the college football world know Mike Leach and a lot of the rants he went on and things. What was it like working for somebody like that? How was he really? And how much of a departure from maybe that type of personality is Urban Meyer, and obviously what that adjustment is like?
Well, comparing the two, I'll start there. There is no comparison, that's I'll leave it there. There's no comparison between the two, in terms of the day-to-day and those things. But Coach Leach was very, very good to me. He gave me an opportunity. He hired the safeties coach at the University of Missouri. We had success at Missouri and then played for a couple of SEC championships and those things. So but he gave me an opportunity to be a coordinator, and that's a big hire for a guy that he didn't know. So indebted to him, and he was good to me over the years, because it certainly wasn't just an easy ride over the last 3 years at that program as we attempted to build that as high as we could make it. And so very, very appreciative of Coach Leach. And the opportunity that he presented was one where you had full autonomy on one side of the football. And that's a unique thing in this profession, to say sink or swim, go run a side of the football, especially as a first-time coordinator. And so that was a very enticing kind of role that was presented to me, and something that attempted every day to take advantage of, and like to think we had some success in our time there.
Is it going to be an adjustment for you personally, going from working for a guy like, I mean, we have no real clue of what it's like being near him every day. I just didn't know.
Yeah.
Is it like it is when we see these things on TV of him going on rants about weddings and certain things, and how different?
1,000%.
That's how it is all the time?
1,000%. He does a great job.
That?
What's that?
Are you going to miss that? Like, is it, because I don't think, I mean, I know Urban does his photobombing things and all that stuff, but like, it's going to be completely different, I feel like.
Right, but I think to somehow suggest 3 years with Coach Leach is now, my expectation for a working environment would not necessarily be accurate. So, but no, it absolutely is different, but it also goes back to there's a number of ways to do it, and his way works for him, and certainly, and I'll reiterate it, just very thankful for the opportunity. We had a good working relationship, and like I said, I like to think both of us had some successes because of each other as much as anything.
And last question for Alex, far in the back right, Aaron.
Aaron Goldstein, Spectrum Sports. You mentioned growing up you were a fan of OSU. Was this always a dream job to have? And as you're coming through the ranks, is this always a job that maybe you had in the back of your mind?
Yeah, I don't think I was naive enough to think or dream of that. I think once you get into this profession, number one, you just want to get a job, and then once you get one, once you're a GA, then you want to be a position coach. You want to run your own room. You want to get on the road recruiting. I was able to do that initially at the University of New Hampshire, and then it's what's the next opportunity, and you want to make sure that as best you can they kind of have that type of career arc, and then. At some point you think about being a coordinator and that, but I think the kind of dreams kind of go away once you realize how hard this business is, and how many guys are out there that are exceptional coaches that aren't presented with opportunities, no, I think I probably crossed that off a long time ago, but certainly, like I said, this has been home, and grew up more than aware of this place. We were certainly fans.
And then being from here, does that give you any type of advantage just on the recruiting scene in Ohio?
You know what? I mean, that's an interesting question. I think my excitement about the university, or my knowing of Columbus or this state. Does that translate to a recruit? I mean, I think it's tough to gauge that. I think in a lot of ways the university, from a sales standpoint, you kind of present what's there, and it's a pretty good product. And from a football standpoint, it's a pretty good product. And so in terms of my background or being from here, I don't know that there's a distinct advantage that way. I think this place has done very, very well without me, and so anything I could do to add to that certainly is my motivation. But no, it's excited to be here. But no, from a recruiting standpoint, I don't think that won't be what guys circle when they sign on down the line at Ohio State.